My name is Serenity. I'm 32 years old and I live in Denver. I'm an interior architect working in the field of luxury hotel design. My whole life I've been used to being overlooked in my own family, always pushed aside so that my younger brother Dylan could shine. But that day, on my 32nd birthday, I thought things would be different. I drove up in my brand new Tesla Model X, bought with the project bonus from the biggest job of my career, carrying a fragile hope that my parents might, for once, look at me with pride. I wore my most elegant dress and even brought along a fine bottle of wine. But the moment I stepped through the door, I realized nothing had changed. I was still invisible in my own family. Everyone was gathered around Dylan. He stood in the center of the living room, excitedly talking about the new house my parents had just put the down payment on for him. On the table sat a cake with words iced clearly across it. "Congratulations, Dylan, on your first home." No one looked at me. No one mentioned my birthday. I stood there in my expensive dress, still holding the gift I hadn't been able to give. Have you ever been hurt by your own family on a day that should have belonged to you? Leave a comment below if you've ever felt forgotten, unseen. Hit like and subscribe to support this channel and don't look away, because what I'm about to share next will change everything. I stood frozen in that room filled with laughter, the smell of roasted meat drifting through the air, red wine glistening in crystal glasses. No one saw me, no one realized what this day meant to me. My mother, in a sea blue silk dress, poured wine for my father and Aunt Susan. My father sat next to Dylan, nodding proudly as Dylan talked about the new place in the Boulder suburbs, the one they proudly called our son's real beginning. Dylan spoke as if he'd saved every penny himself, though I knew very well the down payment had been covered entirely by my parents, and even the furniture contract had been signed directly by my mother. No one mentioned me, even though I had just finished designing the interiors of a boutique hotel in downtown Seattle, a project hailed by critics as groundbreaking, featured on the cover of an architecture magazine only last month. "Serenity, could you get the tray of pastries from the kitchen?" my mother called, not even glancing my way. I blinked, forcing the smile to stay on my lips. I set the bottle of wine on the bar counter, turned, and walked into the kitchen I knew, tile by tile. The heat of the baking tray stung my hands, tightening my chest. How many times had this happened? How many birthdays had slipped away like this? I opened the fridge, scanning through boxes of food for the cake my mother had ordered. I thought even if no one remembered me, at least there would be a cake. But when I saw the white frosting with pale blue writing, my breath stopped. "Congratulations, Dylan, on your first home." In that moment, memories crashed down on me like a silent earthquake. I was 10 again, in a pale pink lace dress, sitting properly on the living room sofa. My hair pinned neatly, cheeks flushed because my mother had said, "You need to look pretty for your birthday guests." I sat, waiting, legs swinging, eyes fixed on the front door. In the kitchen, a purple star-shaped cake I had picked out myself sat untouched in a cardboard box. My father, in his coat, walked past me while talking on the phone, glancing at me as if I were a side table. "Hurry, or we'll be late for Dylan's concert," my mother shouted from the stairs, scarf in hand, lipstick hurriedly applied. "What about my birthday?" I whispered, barely making a sound. My father paused, patted my head, and gave a thin smile. "Next week, sweetheart. Today, Dylan needs us in the audience." No one looked back as I pulled the ribbon clip from my hair and tucked the hand-drawn invitations I had, made with colored pencils, back into my pocket. That evening, I ate half the cake alone and left the rest at the neighbor's door. I can't even remember if I blew out the candles. That hollow ache never left me. Year after year, I learned to arrange things myself, to make my day tolerable in small ways. But no matter what I did, something always crushed my pride whenever I walked into that house, a place where Dylan was extraordinary and I was little more than a distant relative. I carried the tray back out, placing it on the table like a shadow. Dylan was opening an envelope from my parents. Inside was a set of keys. A brand new white SUV waited outside. The whole family applauded as if he'd just won an Ivy League scholarship. I slipped my phone from my pocket. The screen was blank. No messages, no calls. I opened the photo I had taken earlier that afternoon, me standing beside the Tesla Model X I had just picked up from the showroom, the sunlight gleaming off its black paint like a statement of years of effort. I had arranged the purchase myself: maintenance schedule, price negotiation, interior color. I had leaned on no one. Yet every look, every ounce of celebration, every word of praise was poured onto Dylan. "You're awfully quiet," Dylan said, tilting his head, lifting his glass. "What's the matter? Jealous because you don't have your own place yet?" I set my glass of water down, my eyes locking on his. Not everyone needs to be handed a house to have one. The room dropped a beat. My mother coughed lightly. My father frowned. Dylan just shrugged and went back to laughing with the guest beside him. I turned, walking out to the back balcony, the light of the house dimming behind the glass. I leaned against the railing, breathing in deeply. In my purse was something no one else knew, about a copy of an older will sent to me by Mr. Parker, my grandmother's trusted lawyer. I hadn't told anyone that the lakeside house worth $3 million that my parents planned to sign over to Dylan was actually mine. And if they thought I had come tonight just to stay silent and be forgotten again, then they had chosen the wrong person. Night air brushed my face as I stood on the balcony. Below, the garden stretched neatly trimmed, flowers blooming on schedule, golden string lights woven along the white fence. Everything looked perfect on the surface, just as they always wanted others to see this family: respectable, successful, close-knit. But standing there, listening to laughter spilling from the dining room, I saw only an empty shell. I touched my lips lightly, as if to remind myself I was still there. No one had mentioned my birthday, and by now that no longer surprised me. But the sting of being forgotten still burned. The noise inside only made the emptiness sharper. I pulled out my phone, reopening the email from the Fairmont Hotel group in Seattle. At the bottom, they congratulated me for my bold yet elegant design, noting that occupancy had nearly doubled in just 2 months. Along with their praise was a $75,000 bonus, deposited only 2 weeks ago. That project had been my dream. I spent more than a year bringing it to life. I ate box salads for lunch 7 months straight, flew back and forth between Denver and Seattle, argued with contractors over every window frame and tile. When clients changed their minds at the last minute, I stayed up through the night redrawing the plans. And at the grand opening, the person giving the speech on behalf of the design team was a director who had never laid a hand on the project. I just stood on the side, smiling, shaking hands, like I always had. "Serenity?" My father's voice came from behind. I turned. He stood inside the glass door, holding a glass of wine. "Are you all right? Not cold?" I nodded. I just needed some air. He stepped out, his breath tinged with smoke, something my mother hated but never quite forbade. "Dylan was telling us about the new house. Have you seen it?" I leaned against the railing, eyes still on the garden. "I saw. It's nice. It's in Lakewood. We helped him with the first payment, but you know how expensive the market is these days." I tightened my grip on my phone. "I'm working with property too," I said, a hint of steel in my voice. "The hotel project in Seattle is finished. I just got a large bonus." He nodded slowly, as if I'd commented on the weather. "Good. Hard work is a virtue." I turned to face him. "I bought a new car." His brows rose. "That Tesla out front?" I nodded. "Oh, well, did you really need something that expensive? The old car still ran fine." "I didn't buy it because I needed it. I answered quietly. I bought it because I wanted it. It was a reward to myself after a year of working without a single day off. He stood silent, eyes unreadable. Just remember to save for the future. You've never asked what I already have, I said evenly. You've never asked what I've achieved, but you always have opinions about how I live. He looked unsettled. I turned back into the house without waiting for a reply. My mother's laughter rang from the dining room. Everyone, come closer. Dylan, open your gift. I watched my brother tear into a box, pulling out a set of high-end kitchenware, the exact kind I once wanted for myself back in my old apartment, but gave up on when rent went up. He grinned wide, kissing my mother's cheek. Thanks, Mom. This is perfect. We thought you'd like it, she said, her eyes shining. I sat at the edge of a chair by the window, glass of water untouched. No one asked if I wanted seconds. No one noticed I hadn't eaten any cake. No one registered that I had come and would soon leave again. I had once believed that if I succeeded, I'd be loved. That if I brought home awards, if my name appeared on magazines, someone in that family would stop and say, "We're proud of you." But some names are never called, no matter how many accomplishments stand behind them. I didn't stay until the end. When the last slice of cake was cut and the paper plates stacked, I grabbed my coat and slipped out. In my hand was the sleek Tesla key fob. I pressed the button. The lock clicked softly in the quiet night. When the car door shut, I sat still, not starting the engine right away. Beyond the glass, the light from the house spilled out, blurred figures fading into the thin mist. I tilted my head toward the rearview mirror. The woman staring back was no longer the 10-year-old girl waiting for a birthday cake that never came. She had grown, built her own worth, and learned that silence was no longer the only choice. I gripped my purse tighter, where my grandmother's will was carefully tucked away. This story wasn't over, but next time, I would be the one leading it. I reached my apartment close to midnight. The sound of the door closing was soft, but inside me was still loud noise. I slipped off my shoes, walked across the rug under the warm glow of the ceiling lamp, set my bag on the sofa, and stood still for a moment as if my body and mind hadn't yet arrived together. I pulled out my phone and opened Instagram. The photo of my Tesla parked in the evening light, sunlight tracing its sleek edges, was still pinned at the top. The caption I had written just to comfort myself on a day that should have been filled with love had now stirred unexpected reactions. Happy birthday to me. The post had over 200 likes in just a few hours, mostly from colleagues, former classmates, and people in the design industry. Messages of congratulations and admiration for my latest project flooded in. They knew I had worked nonstop for months to complete that job, and perhaps they could sense the new determination in my smile. Then I scrolled down to a comment that felt all too familiar. Probably just rented it for a photo. No way she could afford that. The account, Dylan, B, official. The profile photo showed him holding a guitar in front of the new house he'd just been given. I froze. My finger hovered over the screen before slowly pressing the lock button. I walked into my bedroom, opened the window, and let the night breeze move through the white curtains. His mockery didn't anger me. It felt like confirmation proof that in Dylan's eyes I was still nothing more than a shadow. No one in my family had ever truly cared what I had, what I did, or how I lived. But the moment I stepped beyond the lines they had drawn, suddenly it unsettled them. The next morning, as I brewed coffee, my phone rang. My mother's name lit up the screen. I hesitated a few seconds before answering. "Serenity, are you free tonight? Tonight? Your father and I think we should have a family dinner. Just us. There are some things we need to discuss. Dylan will be there too." I leaned against the kitchen counter. voice even. What could possibly be so important that it needs the whole family? You know what it is, she faltered. The car. And that post. I smirked, setting the mug in the sink. It's just a car. What's there to discuss? It's not just the car, Serenity. You're making the family uncomfortable. A cousin texted me asking if you won the lottery. And that caption, it sounded like blame. I paused, then said softly, I didn't mention anyone in it. But the way you posted, the words you chose, it sent a clear message. Honestly, your father is very confused. His daughter spends more than $60,000 on a car. No one knows where the money came from, and she doesn't share anything with her family. Do you think that's right? I flipped off the coffee machine, still leaning on the counter. Did you ever ask how much I earn, or what I've been doing these past 2 months? Serenity. I didn't win the lottery, I worked. And that caption was the truth. It was my birthday. The problem is, no one but me remembered it. There was a long silence on the other end. Either way, we should meet. 6 p.m. at the house. I didn't answer right away. Then I said quietly, fine, I'll come. When the call ended, I stood still in the kitchen, now filled with the smell of fresh coffee. I stared out the window. This apartment, the car, my achievements, all of it was the result of years of silence and endurance in a family that never believed I could succeed on my own. And now, only because I dared step outside their frame, they were uncomfortable. I couldn't sleep that afternoon. I skimmed through sketches for a new resort project, made revisions, and sent them back to the director. Then I opened the folder I had printed the day before, the copy of my grandmother's will, along with handwritten letters and legal confirmations from Mr. Parker, her lawyer. Each document was a slice of the truth they had hidden. I placed everything into a neat brown leather file case. I wasn't going to this dinner to apologize. I wasn't going to explain the car or the caption. I was going because I was ready. They called it a family meeting. I would bring exactly what needed to be addressed. I arrived at the house 10 minutes before 6. Seattle skies were gray, drizzle tapping lightly against the windshield as I turned off the engine. The Tesla gleamed silver black in the fading light as it rolled to a stop in front of my parents' garage. I sat in the car for a minute, hands gripping the wheel, eyes fixed on the familiar dining room window glowing softly. The leather file case rested on the passenger seat, beside a small cake box I'd picked up from a local bakery. On the white frosting, in neat blue letters, it read, "Happy birthday from me to me." I lifted it, balanced it in my hand, and stepped out of the car. The front door was already open when I reached the porch. My mother stood waiting, wiping her apron, forcing a smile. "You're here. Come in. Everyone's in the kitchen." My father sat at the head of the table, just like every other family dinner. Dylan leaned back in his chair, legs crossed, swirling a glass of red wine. No one stood to greet me. I set the cake on the table, slipped off my coat, and hung it by the door. "You brought a cake?" my mother asked, already setting down 3 plates of roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, and steamed vegetables, a standard dinner, no different from any other night. "Yes," I replied, pulling out a chair across from my father. No one asked what kind of cake. No one asked why I had brought it. Dylan was the first to speak. "Heard you drove a Tesla here. How much does it cost to rent one for a day?" I laid my hand flat on the table, eyes fixed on him. "It's mine. Bought, not rented." My father raised his eyebrows. "You really spent that much on a car?" "I paid $62,000. Most of it came from the Fairmont Hotel project bonus. The rest was savings." My mother set down her fork, eyes uncertain. "You got a bonus that big?" "That project raised their revenue nearly 40% in 6 weeks. They paid me exactly what my work was worth." My father inhaled, swirling his glass of water. Well, we really had no idea what you've been doing. I lifted my head, eyes steady on his. You never asked. Dylan chuckled, breaking the tension. You make it sound like they never cared. I turned to him. Do you remember my 16th birthday? He frowned. Not really. Why? Mom brought home a store-bought lemon cake, even though I'm allergic to lemon. Dad set it on the table. Then the whole family left because you had choir rehearsal. I ate instant noodles and blew out candles alone. My mother stiffened, about to speak, but I continued. When I turned 20, on my college graduation day, the family was in Florida for your summer camp. I accepted my degree over Zoom, sitting alone in my dorm. My father frowned. Didn't you say it wasn't necessary for us to come because you were busy? I shook my head. I said, it's okay if you're busy. No one asked what I wanted, no one suggested working around it. No one even tried. My mother stared down at her plate, fork motionless over the chicken. I looked around the table, meeting each of their eyes. Every milestone in my life was pushed aside for Dylan. Every time I achieved something, it was overshadowed the moment he walked into the room. Attention always shifted to him. Oh, come on, Dylan waved his hand. You're successful, just enjoy it. No one stopped you. I faced him squarely, my voice calm. You mocked my post. You assumed I couldn't afford the car, even though I've never borrowed a dime from you, never asked our parents for anything. My father set his glass down with a faint clink. You called me here because of the car, not because of my birthday, not because you were worried about me, but because you were uncomfortable that I dared live as someone with value. The room fell silent. I opened the cake box, turning the frosted words toward the center of the table. 32 years. 32 birthdays. Not one of you remembered yesterday. Yet you had the time and energy to question the car, to ask where I got the money, to assume I couldn't earn what I have. My mother covered her mouth, eyes brimming red. Sweetheart. I nodded, not shying away from the emotion. I don't need parties. I don't need gifts. But I need to be seen. Not as Dylan's add-on, as myself. I looked directly at my father. If this dinner is a meeting, then let me be clear. I no longer live waiting for approval. I stopped needing your permission long ago. I work, I earn, I buy, I build my name in my field. No one in this family has to understand or praise me, but no one has the right to treat me like I'm hiding some shameful secret. My mother's hands trembled as she dropped her fork back on the plate. I took a deep breath, eyes drifting to the window where the rain had cleared and dust settled softly over the yard. No one spoke. The cake sat untouched, its lettering bold against the frosting, like a question mark in the familiar kitchen where I had grown up, always on the outside of my own family's story. No one reached for a slice. No one picked up their utensils. The kitchen, warm with golden light and the smell of roasted chicken, felt strangely cold. My mother sat dazed, fingers laced together as if searching for something to hold on to. Dylan sipped his wine, avoiding my eyes. My father kept his rigid posture, but the furrow in his brow betrayed his unease. I turned my eyes toward the window. Outside, a light rain had started again. The sound of droplets tapping against the eaves felt like a metronome for the heavy silence that filled the room. The doorbell rang. Everyone jumped. No one spoke. I set my glass of water down and stood. I'll get it. My hand tightened around the strap of the file case as I walked down the hall. I opened the door, already knowing who would be there. Mr. Parker, in a gray overcoat holding a dark leather briefcase, stood on the porch as if he had been waiting for this moment a very long time. "Hello, Serenity," he said, his voice low and rough with age. "I'm sorry to come unannounced, but the time has come." I nodded. "Please, come in." His footsteps echoed slowly on the tiled floor. When he entered the dining room, my father, my mother, and Dylan all stared wide-eyed. "Parker?" my father blurted. "What's going on? What is this?" Mr. Parker removed his hat, set it on an empty chair, and carefully opened his case. "I know this is a family dinner, but I have a good reason for interrupting. And I believe it's best to discuss this while everyone is present." My mother leapt up, alarmed. "Is there a problem? Is this about the inheritance?" Mr. Parker placed a thick stack of papers on the table, flipping to the first page. "It concerns the will of Eleanor, your mother." I stood quietly beside him, saying nothing. My mother's eyes darted from him to me, then back to him. "But that will was settled after she passed." He nodded slightly. "Yes, there was an official version. But, and this is critical, before that, Eleanor drafted another will. It was legally notarized, bearing her clear signature, and stored in my office, exactly as she requested. She instructed me to reveal it only if there was evidence of wrongdoing regarding her estate." Dylan let out a short, annoyed laugh. "This is a joke, right? Grandma left that house to my parents. Their names are on the deed, all the paperwork is clear." "I'm not denying the current paperwork is legally binding," Mr. Parker said calmly, "but that doesn't mean her wishes or ethical intent were respected. What I hold in my hand is proof of the opposite." I pulled a chair and sat back at the table, my eyes fixed on the documents. That lakeside house was where I lived with my grandmother during my last years of high school. While my parents were busy traveling with Dylan for competitions, she was the one who drove me to school, cooked for me, taught me pottery, and shared her life stories by the fireplace. That house was never just property. It was memories, a piece of my youth, the only place in my family where I had ever felt chosen rather than overlooked. Mr. Parker turned a page. "In the will drafted in 2016, Eleanor stated clearly, full ownership of the Whitestone Lake house would pass to her only granddaughter Serenity on the condition that she complete her college degree and remain law-abiding." My mother pressed a hand to her chest. "Oh my God." My father sat frozen. She never said anything." "She told me," Mr. Parker said gently, "and I honored her trust for 7 years. But when I learned the house had been transferred to Dylan 3 months ago without Serenity's knowledge, without my involvement, I knew I could no longer stay silent." Dylan slammed his glass down on the table. "I paid for it. I've been making payments. This isn't about anyone stealing anything." "Where did the down payment come from?" I asked, my voice calm but sharp. He went silent. I turned to my mother. "What did you use Grandma's inheritance money for?" Her voice shook. "We thought you didn't need it. You were already stable." Dylan, on the other hand, I pressed my lips together, holding back the tremor. "I didn't need it. That has always been the excuse. Because I didn't complain. Because I didn't demand. Because I didn't cause trouble." My father lifted his head. "Serenity, we had no bad intentions. We just thought you didn't think. No one in this family ever thought about me. Every decision was made on the assumption that I would stay quiet. And now, when I speak up, you call me selfish." I stood, opened my file, and pulled out the copy of the will Mr. Parker had sent me the week before. I have a full copy. I verified its legality with an independent attorney, and I have every right to challenge the transfer that ignored her original wishes. Mr. Parker nodded gently. "I'll stand as a witness if needed." The room went silent. I looked around. My father stared at his hands. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Dylan turned away. "I didn't come here looking for pity. I came for the truth. And I've made it plain enough." I stood still, my heart colliding with a storm of emotions. Even though I had braced myself, something in the air made my skin crawl as Mr. Parker read each line of the will in that steady voice, hammering against the wall of silence my family had built for years. I looked at my father, then my mother. They had once been where I quietly sought refuge. But in this moment, they weren't parents, they were two calculating adults, bending truth to protect the son they spoiled above all else. I thought, at least. My voice was faint. Even if you favored Dylan when it came to Grandma's house, you would hesitate. She was the one who raised me through my senior year, who held me every night when I came home alone, who handwrote letters to universities to help me get scholarships. My mother's hand covered her mouth. I know. I remember everything. But what, Mom? My tone wasn't angry, I just wanted the answer I'd never had. I stayed silent for more than a decade. Every holiday, every birthday, every graduation, I never demanded. But even Grandma's final wish, you changed? My father laid his hand on the table, brow furrowing. Sweetheart, listen. When your grandmother passed, we honestly didn't think to review every old document. The lawyer your mother hired provided the final version, and we assumed it was settled. I looked him straight in the eye. That final version was written after she was hospitalized, when she was no longer fully lucid. And you didn't consult Mr. Parker. You didn't ask me. You didn't tell the rest of the family. You were fine, my mother whispered. You were always strong, independent. Dylan. Dylan leaned back in his chair, legs crossed. He shrugged. Does that house really matter to you? I thought you lived for independence, career, fancy cars, not some property. I turned to him. Can you name a single day in this family that wasn't about you? One meal where you weren't the main subject? He smirked. I'm the only son. Our parents chose to treat me this way. No one forced them. I nodded slightly. Exactly. You never had to force anything. It all just flowed your... Enough, Dylan, my father snapped. Don't talk like that. I kept my eyes on my brother. You think Grandma's house was a prize, something our parents could slice and hand out like cake. But it wasn't. It was memories. It was the light she left on for me every night. It was the only place where my name was spoken without confusion. My mother looked at me, tears falling, but no apology came. I passed the copy of the will to Mr. Parker. Then Saturday. You'll file this with the probate office, won't you? He nodded. I'll follow the proper legal process. Dylan folded his arms. If the law sides with you, then sue. But really, what do you gain? A $3 million house won't give you what you're missing. I let out a soft laugh, without venom. I'm not missing anything, Dylan. You are. You're living on what others arrange for you, the house, the down payment, the car, the parties thrown instead of someone else's. You think you're the center, but you're just the beneficiary. Other people carry the hard conversations, the disappointments, the sacrifices you never see. Dylan shot up from his chair. You always act like you're the victim. But you've got your own car, a prestigious job, a big bonus. You're better off than anyone here. I rose too, meeting his gaze head on. And you've never once asked what it cost me to get here. The room went still. My father turned away, bracing his hands on the back of his chair. My mother covered her mouth, unable to face me. Dylan pulled out his phone, stormed out of the dining room, and slammed the door. I sat down again, my hands still on the signed copy of the will. Mom, you say I'm fine, that I don't need anything. But being fine doesn't mean being undeserving. I don't ask for much, just respect. Just one small thing, that I not be erased from this family's story. She stayed quiet for a long time, then she nodded slowly, as though each motion forced her to confront something she didn't want to admit. You're right, she whispered, voice breaking. I thought you didn't need anything, so I assumed you'd be fine. But maybe I never asked if you wanted anything. I looked at her. There was softness there, but still far from understanding. My father kept his back turned. I didn't wait for him to speak. I rose, pulled the cake box closer, closed the lid, and laid my hand gently on top as if to mark a goodbye. I won't take anything else from this family except what Grandma left for me, and if it takes going all the way through court to claim it, I will. I carried the file case and the cake, then walked out of the dining room, leaving behind the warm yellow light falling across my parents' stunned faces, two people too accustomed to mistaking my silence for agreement. I drove in silence, both hands steady on the wheel, eyes locked on the rows of streetlights ahead. The Tesla glided smoothly through the quiet Bellevue streets. My chest no longer trembled. The anger had cooled, replaced by a chilling clarity. There was nothing left in that house for me to hold on to. No trust, no recognition, not even a real apology. Before heading home, I stopped by my personal attorney's office, Andrew Maher, an old college friend. He had been the first person I contacted after receiving the handwritten envelope from my grandmother, sent before she passed. I still remembered the moment I opened it, my hands trembling, tears falling as I traced the familiar slanted handwriting. In that letter, she told me she had revised her will once more, secretly sending a copy to the family lawyer, Mr. Parker, while also sending me an identical version. She wrote, "Serenity, you may not be the one most cherished in this family, but to me, you are the one who always kept her word. If one day you feel something is wrong with this house, go to Mr. Parker and hold on to this as part of what is. Right." At the time, I thought she was being overly cautious. But just weeks after the funeral, my parents announced the lakeside house would be sold to relieve the burden of maintenance, with Dylan as the buyer. When I asked why the transfer had been so simple, my mother said, "Because you don't live there. And Dylan needs a stable place to start a family." I didn't answer, but from that moment, I began digging. Quietly, I asked Andrew to check the property records. What we found was troubling. The notarized deed had been signed by my mother, as Eleanor's legal representative, just days before my grandmother's death, at a time when she was no longer lucid enough to sign anything herself. More importantly, we uncovered an email exchange between my mother and the broker's law office. In it, she specifically requested they use the will filed in 2013, the version that excluded me as an heir. The message had been sent from her old email account, but the wording and tone bore little resemblance to her usual way of speaking. It was almost certain she never realized the 2016 will had been ignored. I had printed everything, compiled it into a case file, sealed it, and kept it in my safe for nearly 3 months. I hadn't planned to act until they staged a so-called family dinner just to interrogate me about a car I bought with my own hard work. This morning, I returned to Andrew's office to get additional verification. He had prepared a full report independently notarized, complete with the broker's signatures and metadata showing the exact timestamp when my mother sent the request to disregard the updated will. By the time I drove home, Seattle rain was coming down hard. I didn't go inside right away. I sat in the car for a long while, staring through the fogged glass. Right in front of me was my second-floor apartment, small but warm. Every piece of furniture had been chosen by me. I liked things neat and symmetrical, maybe because I'd grown too used to living inside crooked relationships. I stepped into the living room, turned on the light, set the case file on the table, and opened my laptop. No one was forcing me to do this. But I no longer accepted others deciding my worth and disguising it as taking care of me. The next morning, I went back to my parents' house. My mother opened the door, her face unsettled. "You came back?" I nodded. "I need everyone here." My father was on the porch, holding a mug of coffee, his eyes still evasive. Dylan sat in the living room, phone in hand, muttering to himself. I opened the leather case, pulled out the documents, and placed them on the coffee table. Here's what I've collected. It includes Grandma's 2016 will naming me as heir, her handwritten letter, and a copy of the email Mom used to request the valid document be ignored. No one spoke. I continued. I didn't come here to apologize, and I don't need empty promises to fix this. I just want you to know I didn't turn a blind eye. I have full evidence to take this to court if necessary. Dylan arched his brows, trying to look unfazed. So, what's your plan? Go public? Humiliate the family? I turned toward him. My plan is to reclaim what belongs to me, quietly, without pity. My father set his coffee down, eyes fixed on the printed email. He spoke softly. So what do you want from us? I didn't hesitate. I want my name restored to the title of that house. I want Grandma's will honored, and if it can't be settled peacefully, then the court will do it. My mother pressed her hand to her forehead, eyes closed. You're turning this into a war, she whispered. No, I answered. A war begins when people take from others in silence and expect them to stay quiet forever. Still no reply. I rose, lifted the file. I'll give you 3 days. After that, I'll proceed with legal action. Without waiting for their response, I turned and walked out, not out of hurt this time, but out of resolve. I had barely stepped 3 paces from the porch when the door flew open behind me. Who do you think you are? Dylan's voice cut through a mix of fury and panic. I turned. He stood at the doorway, his hands gripping the frame, lips pale, eyes burning with the desperation of a child whose toy had been snatched, though it had never been his to begin with. You're taking Mom and Dad to court? Over a house? I steadied myself, slipping a hand into my coat pocket. Over the truth. The house is just the outcome. Dylan stormed down the steps, his voice rising. You love playing games with the law, going to drag the whole family into this? Or do you just want everyone to see how accomplished you are? I met his glare. I don't need recognition from anyone. But I won't sit by while someone erases my name from Grandma's will. You've always been jealous of me, he hissed, since we were kids. Grandma favored you, our parents favored me. You've always wanted to compete. And now you want to strip this house from me for what? Some twisted pride? I drew a deep breath. Not pride, Dylan. Honor. Fairness. He let out a bitter laugh. Fairness? You grew up safe, got scholarships, built a respectable career. And me? I had to fight for every ounce of recognition. You think I was spoiled? Do you know what it's like to live under constant expectation? I stepped closer, my voice low but sharp as a blade. You weren't under expectation, you were on a red carpet. Did anyone ever ask if I wanted to stay in your shadow for 20 years? I never took a thing from you, Dylan. But you and our parents took nearly everything from me, even the last wish Grandma left in my hands. The door opened again. My mother stepped out, followed by my father. Enough, my father barked. Both of you, stop! I turned. His eyes no longer held doubt, only anger. Can't you see you're pushing this past the point of no return? I looked at him. I haven't pushed anything too far. I've only spoken. I've only begun to claim what's rightfully mine. My mother's eyes brimmed red. If you take this to court, have you thought about the family's reputation? People will gossip. Friends will think we robbed our own child. They won't understand. I raised my brows slowly. Family's reputation? I gave a faint, steady laugh. That reputation was never for me, Mom. I have nothing left to lose. The words cracked the silence like an explosion. My mother froze. My father's brows knitted, ready to speak, but falling mute. I stepped up onto the porch, facing them. I once thought keeping peace was the only way not to make things worse. But peace doesn't mean surrender, and silence doesn't mean consent. Dylan shot me a furious look. You're tearing this family apart. I didn't flinch. A family can't be torn apart if it was never truly whole. My father moved forward, his voice heavy. What are you planning? Force us to transfer the house back? Shame us in front of the relatives? Undo everything we've built? I looked him in the eye, calm. All I ask for is fairness. The rest is up to you. My mother clutched his arm, her voice trembling. We're old, Serenity. This is too complicated. I don't want more heartbreak. I answered softly. Then it shouldn't have been done wrong in the first place. No one responded. I stepped back into the yard, rain misting my hair. I turned once more. I've made myself clear. 3 days. If nothing is resolved legally and morally by then, I'll let the courts handle it. My father gripped the stair rail tightly. My mother covered her mouth. Dylan kicked a flower pot hard on the porch, then stormed back inside, the door slamming behind him. I didn't look back. I got into my car and started the engine. The smooth hum was like an admission. I was no longer the daughter pressed against the wall whenever the family chose someone else over me. In my hands, the wheel was steady. On the table behind me, the evidence was undeniable, and inside me was a resolve that could no longer be undone. I walked slowly through the polished wooden hallway of the Whitestone Vista Hotel, where I had spent nearly a year designing every detail from the marble veining at the reception desk to the glass chandeliers in the conference hall. The smell of fresh wood, the faint fragrance of orchids hanging from the ceiling trellis, everything spoke of the elegance, precision, and confidence I had worked so hard to build. Today was the official press conference announcing the partnership between Whitestone and the international resort chain Maven Group, a turning point for the luxury hotel industry in the Northwest. As lead architect, I had been invited to deliver the opening speech before the media and investors. I wore a light cream suit, a silk V-neck blouse, and gray low heels. Everything fit perfectly. I stepped onto the stage where the microphone had already been adjusted. The heat of the television lights bore down on my shoulders, but my hands didn't shake. Good afternoon, everyone, I began, sweeping the room with my eyes. My name is Serenity Blake, lead architect of the Whitestone Vista project. I am honored to stand here today not only to talk about the building my team and I have created, but also to share a very personal story, something I have never spoken of publicly. Below, some reporters double-checked their recorders, eyes lifted toward me. I let the silence linger for a few seconds before continuing. I grew up in a comfortable family, but it was not easy. I was the quiet child, the one whose holidays, birthdays, and milestones were always treated as secondary if someone else in the family had fam. Something more important. I once believed that if I just worked harder, if I just achieved more, I would finally be acknowledged. I paused, letting the words settle. A few faces in the audience leaned closer. Recently, I discovered that my grandmother, the only person in the family who truly understood me, had left me a legacy in her will. But my parents deliberately concealed that document and sold the house to my younger brother. It was done without a single word to me. A wave of murmurs rippled through the press seats. I fixed my gaze on the cameras. I don't share this for sympathy. I share it to talk about silence. Because when we stay silent too long, others assume we agree. And when we finally stand up for fairness, they call us destroyers. But some truths, if left unspoken, will slowly wither us away. At the back of the hall, I saw Andrew, my lawyer, standing quietly. He gave me a small nod of support. Architecture demands patience, precision, and vision. I have used those same principles to construct my own life piece by piece in silence. But I will be silent no longer. I nodded toward the sound team. On the big screen behind me, a video began to play footage of the hotel's construction, original sketches with my signature, moments of the team inspecting details before opening day. The final image was of me standing in front of my Tesla with the words "Happy Birthday" from me to me beneath it, and the headline: "The woman who built this hotel was once forgotten by her own family." The air in the hall seemed trapped in everyone's chest. Camera shutters clicked furiously. As I stepped down from the stage, a reporter from the Seattle Times approached. "Miss Serenity, would you be willing to share more details about your family hiding the will?" I looked her straight in the eye. "I have all the legal proof. I won't publish anyone's names. But the most important point isn't who did what, it's that this happens to many people. Some are robbed of what they rightfully deserve simply because they stay quiet." The reporter nodded, jotting notes. Another, from Vision Line, a top interior design magazine, asked, "Has this affected your relationship with your family?" I was silent for a moment. Relationships are a two-way street. I've never closed the door, but I won't walk into a house where no one remembers I have a key. That answer later appeared word for word in headlines across the country. Serenity Blake. I didn't break the family. They just didn't realize I was outside. Within 24 hours, footage of my speech spread rapidly across social media. A clipped video of my remarks, paired with construction images, and the caption, "A woman built her entire career just to prove she deserves to be seen," appeared on the front pages of major platforms. Comments poured in. "She spoke for me. Thank you for not staying silent. Not everyone has the courage to stand up like that." That night, I sat quietly on the balcony of my apartment. Before me stretched the still waters of Lake Union, and beyond, the blinking lights of the Space Needle. In my hand was a half-full glass of white wine. Beside me sat the small box I had carried home from the previous dinner, the cake, untouched. I opened the lid. The words were still clear. "Happy birthday." From me to me. I didn't need anyone to write it. I didn't need anyone to read it for me. But now, at least, the world had heard me speak. 3 months later, I sat in courtroom 7 of the King County Civil Court, my hand resting on the file in my lap. The air was thick with waiting silence. Andrew sat beside me, head slightly bowed, eyes scanning his notes, though I knew he had memorized every page. Across from us, my mother sat beside my father, their hands clasped tightly, faces stricken. Dylan sat with arms crossed, leaning back, his leg bouncing despite his forced calm. The judge, a middle-aged woman with silver hair pinned neatly back, read each line clearly as she reached the final page of the ruling. I don't recall every sentence, only her voice. "The court finds the 2016 will valid, properly executed, and unchallenged by any document of equal or greater legal standing. The court orders the restoration of ownership of the Whitestone Lake House to the rightful heir under that will, Miss Serenity Blake." The room fell silent, as though all the air had been pulled out. I didn't exhale, didn't smile, only felt something deep inside my chest rise to my throat and then settle again. Dylan shot up from his seat. "Ridiculous. This is unfair. She dragged her whole family to court just because." "Sit down, Mr. Dillon," the judge interrupted firmly, without raising her voice. "Any further objections will follow the appeals process, not here." I didn't look at him. I didn't look at my mother. I simply nodded to Andrew and walked out. When I stepped through the courthouse doors, the early April sun spilled over the steps like light after a long sleep. That afternoon, the news broke wide. The front page of Seattle Weekly ran the headline, "Hidden Will. Architect Serenity Blake wins back inherited home from her own family." Beneath it was a photo of me leaving court, sunlight on my calm face. The next day, in a brief interview, my mother, tired, makeup-free, admitted on camera, "We were wrong. and we apologized to our daughter for not trusting her, not asking, not doing right. It has been too long. Dylan never appeared. My father, he sent only a short email. No subject line, no greeting, just 6 words. I hope you feel lighter now. I didn't reply. But what surprised me most came from Camille. She was Aunt Linda's daughter, my mother's younger sister, who lived in Portland and rarely spoke to me beyond polite holiday texts. A week after the verdict, Camille emailed me. The message was simple: Serenity, I read every article. I never imagined. Or more truthfully, I never put myself in your place. I'm not taking sides. I just want to say, if you need someone standing beside you at the family gathering next month, I'll be there, sending you a long overdue hug. At the bottom was her new signature, Camille Harper, Assistant Executive Director, Portland Community Arts Project. I sat quietly for a few minutes before replying with one line: thank you. Your being there's enough. Almost a year has passed. My 33rd birthday was held on the rooftop terrace of the Harborview Hotel, the 4th project I had overseen since Whitestone. There were no streamers, no multi-tiered cake, only a long table draped in white linen, a few bunches of tulips in simple glass vases, and laughter that felt unforced. Ben, my trusted colleague, stood to raise his glass. Serenity doesn't need a spotlight. She shines on her own with the things she does every day. And today we celebrate her not for her achievements, but because she has walked through what once made her small. I lifted my face in a smile, warmth rising in my chest until it caught in my throat. Not because of the eloquent words, but because I no longer had to pretend to be strong. At the end of the evening, when most had gone, Camille came over and placed a small box in my hand. I searched everywhere to find this, she said with a soft smile. It's not much, but it feels right. I opened it. Inside was a silver compass pendant, delicate yet sturdy, with a tiny amber stone in the center. My fingers brushed the cool metal, and I felt something unusual, like touching a quiet affirmation. I think, Camille said slowly, those who have been lost the longest understand best the value of choosing their own path. That night, back home, I stood before the mirror in my bedroom. I removed the light makeup, took off my earrings, then lifted the necklace, and clasped it behind my neck. I looked at the woman in the mirror, hair neatly tied back, soft gray turtleneck, eyes no longer guarded. I smiled. My direction, I whispered to myself, from now on is mine to choose. What do you think it means when a child has to fight all the way to court just to be acknowledged for what was theirs from the beginning? When family is no longer a place of safety, but the place where one can be wounded the most? I share this story not to claim credit or cast blame, but in the hope that someone out there silently enduring as I once did might find a little more courage to stand up. To understand that protecting yourself is not selfish. To realize that we all have the right to choose our own path, even if it means walking away from those we once called family. If you've lived through something similar, or if you simply have a thought to share, I would love to hear it. Leave your words below. Your experience might be the very thing that helps someone else feel less alone. And if this story resonates with you, don't forget to follow the channel. I have many more stories to tell about quiet yet powerful women, about family, betrayal, love, and how we learn to trust ourselves again. Because sometimes it is the everyday stories that make us pause, look back at the road we're on, and maybe, just maybe, find our own compass.